During a concert in Detroit, Eminem suddenly stops singing and brings someone on stage. She's the woman who saved his life 5 years ago, and what they're about to do will make you cry. The crowd at Detroit's Ford Field was electric, a sea of 65,000 fans pulsing with anticipation. The air crackled with excitement as the unmistakable beat of asterisk lose yourself asterisk began to thump through the massive speakers. Eminem, the hometown hero, burst onto the stage with his signature intensity, his rapid-fire lyrics igniting the audience into a frenzy. As the song reached its crescendo, Eminem suddenly paused, his hand raised to silence the music. The abrupt halt sent a ripple of confusion through the crowd. Whispers and murmurs filled the stadium as fans exchanged puzzled glances. The anticipation in the air was palpable, each fan holding their breath, waiting for the next chapter in this unexpected narrative. The rapper's eyes scanned the crowd, his expression unreadable. "There's someone here tonight who saved my life, and I don't mean that in some metaphorical way. I mean, she literally saved my life." The crowd, now silent, was on the edge of their seats, their hearts beating in sync with the unfolding drama. They were about to witness a side of their idol they had never seen before. "I've never told this story before," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying clearly through the sound system. "But it's time. It's time you all knew the truth about how close you came to never hearing another Eminem album again." He gestured toward the side of the stage, where a spotlight suddenly illuminated a petite, middle-aged woman with graying hair and kind eyes. She looked nervous, almost overwhelmed by the attention suddenly thrust upon her. "This is Emma," Eminem said, his voice thick with emotion. "And without her, I wouldn't be standing here today." The crowd, now on their feet, clapped and cheered, their curiosity piqued. Who was this unassuming woman? How had she saved one of the most famous rappers in the world? Eminem reached out and took Emma's hand, squeezing it reassuringly. The contrast between the tattooed, tough-talking rapper and the modest, grandmotherly figure beside him was striking. "What happened?" Eminem paused, his eyes glistening under the harsh stage lights. "Well, it's a story that's going to make you cry, but first, you need to understand how we got here." With that cryptic introduction, Eminem guided Emma to a pair of stools that had been quickly brought onto the stage. As they sat down, the stadium lights dimmed, leaving only a soft spotlight on the unlikely duo. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation, hanging on every word as Eminem began to speak again, his voice low and intense. "It all started 5 years ago, on a night I thought would be my last." Eminem's story transported the audience back 5 years, to a time when the rapper's life was spiraling out of control. Despite his immense success, he found himself battling demons that threatened to consume him entirely. "I was at my lowest point," Eminem confessed, his eyes fixed on some distant memory. "The pressure, the fame, the constant scrutiny, it was all too much. I'd been struggling with addiction for years, but this time was different." He described a night of excess that had left him teetering on the edge of oblivion. After a particularly grueling recording session, Eminem had retreated to his hotel room, determined to numb the pain that had become his constant companion. "I mixed pills with alcohol," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I knew it was dangerous, but at that moment, I didn't care. I just wanted it all to stop." As he spoke, Emma sat quietly beside him, her eyes filled with a mixture of compassion and remembered fear. The audience was captivated, many wiping away tears as they listened to their idol bare his soul. Eminem continued, describing how he had stumbled out of his hotel room in a drug-induced haze, somehow making his way to the roof of the building. The cool night air had momentarily cleared his head, but the darkness inside him remained. "I stood there on the edge, looking down at the city lights," he said, "and for a moment, I thought about how easy it would be to just let go." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The thought of losing their idol, of how close they had come to a world without Eminem's music, was almost too much to bear. It was at this critical moment that Emma entered the story. Eminem turned to her, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Why don't you tell them what happened next?" he asked gently. Emma cleared her throat, clearly nervous about addressing such a massive audience. But as she began to speak, her voice grew stronger, filled with the conviction of someone recounting a life-changing event. "I was working as a housekeeper at the hotel," she began. "It was late, and I was just finishing up my shift when I decided to take a shortcut through the roof access to get to the employee parking lot." She described how she had pushed open the heavy metal door to the roof, only to find herself face to face with one of the most famous musicians in the world, a man who was clearly in crisis. "I didn't recognize him at first," Emma admitted. "All I saw was a young man in pain, standing far too close to the edge of the roof." What followed was a tense standoff that lasted nearly an hour. Emma, drawing on years of experience as a crisis hotline volunteer, talked to Eminem with a mixture of compassion and firm resolve. "I didn't try to talk him down right away," she explained. "I just listened. I let him pour out all the pain and frustration he'd been carrying for so long." Eminem nodded, picking up the thread of the story. "She didn't judge me, didn't try to tell me everything would be okay. She just heard me, really heard me. Maybe for the first time in years." As the night wore on, Emma slowly coaxed Eminem away from the edge, both literally and figuratively. She shared her own stories of struggle and redemption, creating a connection that transcended their vastly different backgrounds. "She told me about her own battles with depression," Eminem said, his voice thick with emotion. "How she'd lost her son to addiction years before. And somehow, hearing her story gave me hope that maybe I could find a way through the darkness too." By the time the sun began to rise, painting the Detroit skyline in hues of pink and gold, Eminem had stepped back from the precipice. Emma had called for help, and within hours, the rapper was on his way to a rehabilitation facility. "She saved my life that night," Eminem said simply, "not just by stopping me from jumping, but by showing me that there was still goodness in the world, that I was worth saving." The audience sat in stunned silence, many openly weeping at the raw honesty of the story. But Eminem wasn't finished yet. He turned to Emma, a mischievous glint in his eye. "But that's not the end of the story, is it?" he asked. "Why don't you tell them what happened next?" Emma looked surprised, clearly not expecting to be put on the spot again. But as she met Eminem's encouraging gaze, she took a deep breath and began to speak. "After that night," she said, her voice gaining strength, "I didn't expect to ever see Marshall, Eminem, again. I was just grateful he was getting the help he needed." She went on to describe how, in the months that followed, she had tried to put the incident behind her. She continued her work at the hotel, volunteering at the crisis hotline in her spare time, living a quiet life far removed from the world of celebrity and music. "But then, about 6 months later, I got a call," Emma continued, a smile spreading across her face. "It was Marshall. He was out of rehab, clean and sober, and he wanted to thank me in person." Eminem picked up the story, describing how he had tracked Emma down, determined to express his gratitude for her life-saving intervention. "I owed her everything," he said simply. "I couldn't just let that go." What started as a simple thank you lunch turned into a profound friendship. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, Eminem and Emma found in each other a kindred spirit, a shared understanding of life's struggles and the power of redemption. "Emma became like family to me," Eminem explained, his usual tough guy persona softening as he spoke. "She was there for me during the hardest parts of my recovery, always ready with a word of encouragement or a swift kick in the ass when I needed it." The audience laughed at this, the tension of the earlier revelations beginning to ease. But there was more to come. Emma took over, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "What Marshall didn't know," she said, "was that while I was helping him, he was saving me too." She went on to explain how, in the years since losing her son, she had been going through the motions of life without really living. Her encounter with Eminem had reignited her passion for helping others, giving her a renewed sense of purpose. Watching Marshall fight his way back from the brink, seeing him reclaim his life and his art, it inspired me, Emma said. It made me realize that it's never too late for a second chance. Eminem nodded, adding, Emma pushed me to use my platform for more than just music. She encouraged me to speak out about mental health, about addiction, and about the importance of asking for help. The rapper described how, with Emma's encouragement, he had become more involved in addiction recovery programs, using his own experiences to help others who were struggling. He funded rehabilitation centers, spoke at schools about the dangers of drug abuse, and worked to destigmatize mental health issues in the hip-hop community. But that's not all, Eminem said, a hint of excitement creeping into his voice. Emma, why don't you tell them your big news? Emma blushed, looking both embarrassed and proud. Well, she began hesitantly. Inspired by everything that happened, I decided to go back to school. And last month, at the age of 58, I graduated with a degree in social work. As Emma finished speaking, a commotion erupted near the front of the stage. A young man, no older than 20, pushed his way to the front, tears streaming down his face. Miss Emma, he shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. You saved me too. I was in your first youth program. I was going to end it all, but hearing your story with Eminem gave me hope. The crowd erupted in cheers, the atmosphere in the stadium electric with joy and admiration. Eminem stood up, pulling Emma to her feet and into a warm embrace. But here's the real kicker, the rapper said, his voice carrying over the applause. Emma's not just any social worker. Starting next month, she'll be running a new youth outreach program that I'm funding right here in Detroit. The cheers grew even louder, the audience on their feet as they celebrated this unexpected turn of events. Eminem raised his hand, calling for quiet once more. You see, he said, his voice thick with emotion, this is why I wanted to share this story with you all tonight. Because it's not just about how Emma saved my life, it's about how one act of kindness, one moment of human connection, can create ripples that change the world. He turned to Emma, taking her hand in his. This woman didn't just save my life that night on the roof. She gave me a reason to live, a purpose beyond just making music. And now together, we're going to help save other lives. Other kids who might be standing on their own metaphorical rooftops, thinking there's no way out. The emotion in the stadium was palpable, a mixture of joy, admiration, and hope that seemed to touch every person present. Fans who had come expecting just another concert found themselves part of something much more profound, a testament to the power of human compassion and the possibility of redemption. Eminem addressed the crowd one final time, his voice strong and clear. So, the next time you think your actions don't matter, remember this story. Remember that a housekeeper working the night shift had the courage to reach out to a stranger in need. And in doing so, she not only saved a life, but set in motion a chain of events that will help countless others. He paused, looking out over the sea of faces. And remember that no matter how dark things seem, no matter how hopeless you feel, there's always a way back to the light. You just have to be brave enough to take that first step, or to reach out your hand to someone who needs it. With that, Eminem turned back to the music, launching into a powerful rendition of Asterisk, Not Afraid Asterisk, the lyrics taking on new meaning in light of the story he had just shared. But this time, he wasn't alone on stage. Emma stood beside him, swaying to the music, her presence a powerful reminder of the night she had saved his life and the journey they had taken together since then. As the music swelled and the crowd sang along, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. The concert had become more than just a show. It was a celebration of life, of second chances, and of the profound impact one person can have on the world. And as the final notes faded away, the audience knew they had witnessed something truly special, a moment of raw honesty and human connection that transcended fame, music, and all the trappings of celebrity. They left the stadium that night not just as fans of Eminem's music, but as believers in the power of kindness and the enduring strength of the human spirit. In the days and weeks that followed, the story of Eminem and Emma spread far beyond the walls of Ford Field, touching hearts and changing lives in ways they could never have imagined. And in Detroit, a new youth outreach center would open its doors, ready to offer hope and support to those who needed it most, a living testament to the night a housekeeper saved a rap star and, in doing so, started a movement of compassion that would ripple out into the world for years to come.